Dun, dun, dun. Something a little larger. Hi everybody, and welcome back to Plastic Models by a Regular Dude, and part number 1 of the Monogram 1/48 scale B-25J Mitchell. First off, I want to send out a big thanks to my buddy Jim for sending me this kit. That will be Jim over at Shutter Ace. So if you haven't checked out his channel, might want to check it out. We do some collabs together, and he's got all kinds of kits that he's building all the time. But good stuff. He's a good guy. But anyway, he sent me this kit, and I was pretty stoked because this is one of those kits that I never built when I was younger. That I always wanted to. I did build one of the older Vel kits, but it was ancient, and I think you could do it as Doolittle's aircraft. But that was back in like 77. So this one should be a step up from that one, I think. Okay, so let's take a look at the lineage of this thing. It's a Monogram kit, first kitted in 1977. In 1981, it got new parts in a new box. In 91, which is what this boxing is, got a new box and new parts. And then in 94, new parts again with yet another new box art. So that is pretty much the lineage of this kit. Traces its roots back to 1977. All right, let's take a look at the box first. And basic top opening box. Monogram, skill 2, more challenging, requires glue 128 pieces. I'll explain more about that in a minute. 148 B-25J Mitchell, and it is kit number 5507. On this side of the box, you have choose the model that's right for you. Skill 1, 2, and 3. 1 snaps together, 2, which is this one, it's more challenging and requires glue, and then 3 is the most challenging for experienced builders. Then you have some basic information about the aircraft there in English and French. On this end of the box, you have an illustration of the actual built model. On this side here, you have a photograph of the built model, some cutaways of the interior detail, and another photo of the built model. Just basic information here: age 10 and up, skill level 2, maybe painted to match photos on box, cement and paint not included. Monogram Models Incorporated, distributed by Revell AG. 1991 Monogram models, made in USA. So that's the box. So let's take a look at the contents. All right, first up, we've got the instructions. Typical instructions of the time period, information on the aircraft itself. Then it has in different languages, read this before you begin. A simple legend here of what the different symbols mean. And then a list of paints that are recommended. Now, these older kits, as far as I can remember, and there's, proof positive, most of the kits back in the day did not recommend specific brands. So they would just give you flat black, aluminum, olive drab, white, olive green, tan, yellow, brown, light blue, blue, gray, red, green. Just the basic names. And then from there, you chose the colors and brands that you wanted. I'm not thinking people were as much of a stickler for paint accuracy back in the day, but I could be wrong. But anyway, it is a fold-out map, fold-out kind of thing, like this. And basic illustrations. It's kind of nice that they actually denote what a given item is. For example, this part here, part number 58, is seats, and then it has the little color indicator letters, so H, E, and F. H brown, E olive green, F tan. So that's kind of cool. But it's kind of cool that it tells you what these different parts are. Kids don't do that nowadays. And I remember as a kid, I learned a lot about aircraft and armor and stuff like that because they actually told you what you were doing or what the part was. And if it wasn't on the sheet like this, sometimes it was a whole list of the parts numbers and what that particular part number was. So it was kind of cool. But you got, and it's weird because nowadays, this is another thing that's changed. This right here would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This goes left to right, like you're reading a book. So you got inside fuselage, step 1, and more of the inside of the fuselage parts. So you've got the cockpit floor, you've got some end panels, bulkheads, whatever you want to call them. The cockpit, the landing gear, and front of the aircraft, the wing connection points that poke through the fuselage. So just your basic instructions of the time period. And like right here, you know, you've got the wing and the engine nacelle and landing gear for the right side. It says, you know, right side shown, left side shown. So it kind of breaks that down for you. Right, here's another kind of cool thing. Down here on the bottom, and you know, you can skip over this if you don't like this kind of stuff, but I just find it interesting and kind of cool that they do this. Canopy detail. Mask entire canopy with a dull finish acetate mending tape. Carefully cut the tape from areas to be painted. Paint the exposed parts and allow to dry. Remove the remaining tape. So basically make your own masks. So, you know, it's kind of cool. You know, not everybody does that anymore. They just assume that you know to do that. But anyway, so that's the inside part. And then we've got the back part here with a total of 20 steps. None of them are overly difficult. Not too many things going on in each step, so not bad. And, you know, as I go through, when it comes to particulars about a given aircraft or whatever, I'll talk about that. Then right here, we have our drawing of decal placement and on the propeller and on the rest of the aircraft. And it also gives the paint colors for something, but they go with the FS numbers. So I'm assuming that is for these cowl rings. I'm sure that's what that is. And then this dark color is for the anti-glare panel in front of the cockpit. So that is that. Instructions. Normally I move on to plastic and do decals last, but in this case, since I'm not using these decals, I'm going to go ahead and talk about them here. These are the decals that come with this kit, and this is a pretty well-known aircraft. There's lots of photos of that. Now, one thing I will note is I'm assuming that my friend Jim knows how to store a model kit, because oftentimes they go through drastic changes in temperature, and I think I could be wrong, but I think that's what wreaks havoc on decal sets. So this decal set printed in 91, and it is not yellowed at all. So the decal film, the carrier film, it's just lovely. So I don't know, they look pretty good though. They're really, really thin. They look to be in register really well, meaning the colors aren't out of alignment with each other. So yeah, it's a nice decal set. It's almost a shame I'm not using them. I will keep them though. Who knows? But yeah, they don't look bad. Look like good decals, but you know, again, I'm not using them, so we'll move on to the plastic. All right, let's talk about fuselage halves. So here is the left side fuselage half. Lots of detail going on here. Some nice ejector pin marks. Some quite pronounced, protruding, and then some recessed. And, you know, that's kind of a bummer, and some people really freak out about that kind of thing. However, in a case like this, with it all buttoned up, you can't see inside of this aircraft. I mean, you can kinda through the windows, but unless you put lights in it, you're not really going to see a whole lot on the inside. So there's not really a whole lot of reason to freak out about the ejector pin marks. I mean, that was the technology of the time, so that's just the way it is. There's lots of rib detail, lots of surface detail molded in, cables, hoses. There's a lot going on right there. But again, once this thing's buttoned up, you're not even going to see it. So in all actuality, for the most part, like the cockpit I'll probably take care of pretty well. But the detail is not going to be seen. I'm not going to worry about too much. But yeah, not bad. The exterior, it is raised panel lines, which was the norm back in the day. And due to the quantity, it wouldn't be that hard to rescribe this stuff and make it recessed. But one has to ask, is it really worth doing all that? The only part that's a bummer is whenever you have to clean seam lines, you can obliterate it. So, you know, it's just the way it is, kind of weird. But two of these, left and a right. Detail looks nice. Again, raised panel line detail, but that's not a deal breaker for some people, me included, on an older kit. Next we have two sprues with the main wing components. You got an upper and lower wing halves. There is the tail section here, and then one of the vertical stabilizer / rudders. Now the detail on those is really nice. There's some fine rivet detail going on there, and nice ribbing on the fabric control surfaces. As far as flash goes, it's not too bad, at least on this one. So, you know, it should glue together well. A little bit of edge cleanup and stuff like that, but, you know, again, not that big of a deal. Now, here's one thing that they used to do back in the old days that just drives people nuts, and that's they'll have, you know, raised, I mean, thankfully it's raised, but raised like copyright information and stuff like that. So that'll have to be trimmed off and sanded and stuff. I mean, why they did, oh well, they did do it on the inside as well. Copyright Monogram Models Incorporated, all rights reserved, made in USA. Now, one thing to note on these older kits as well is there is no A, B, C, and D sprues, and some of the sprues are even frameless. It's just the runners, no outer frame type thing. The fuselage halves actually attached to this part, but one of them was completely off, so I just cut the other one off. Now here's an interesting note. Number 5500-0610 would be molded in OD, olive drab. 5502-0610 is in silver. So that's kind of cool, I guess, if you're into that kind of thing. So that is that sprue. You have a similar sprue with the other wing halves, or the other wing, upper and lower, and the engine nacelles and the other tail, vertical tail piece. And yeah, that's that. Now, the detail on here, let me zoom in so maybe you can see all these panels and all this kind of stuff. It looks really good. Raised, again, you know, raised rivets, but it looks really nice. And I've discovered that, you know, in building kits like this with raised surface detail, it takes paint well and it looks good. So, you know, it's not a deal breaker. If you haven't built one, maybe try one. You might like it. But anyway, that's the engine nacelles, upper and lower wing halves, and more of the vertical tail stuff. Next up, we have, this is a lot of, like, you have the landing gear here, front and wing landing gear, lots of small parts, machine guns, bulkheads, instrument panel. And the instrument panel, again, you know, old technology, and it's molded on there, but it's actually really, the relief on it is really good. Now, you can't get in there, or I mean, I guess you could, if some people could. I can't. But it would be possible to paint that up really nice. Most people, me included, on stuff like that, would just paint it black like it's supposed to be and then dry brush it to bring out the detail. But I have an alternate plan. Then we have the front nose machine guns, which, you know, and then we have the solid nose parts there. More machine guns, seats, there's all kinds of interior detail. Again, flash, not too bad, and the molding looks pretty good. So, being that this is an older kit, the molds weren't as worn when this thing was shot. So what happens sometimes is when the molds come together, once they're worn out, you know, they don't press together good. They've just, you know, they might be shifted slightly. So you end up with stuff like landing gear that instead of being like this in cross section, it's kind of like this. So by the time you get rid of the mold seam lines, you end up with an oblong cross section when it should be round. And that should not be an issue here because this all looks really good. Even the machine guns, the mold seam lines are very, very faint. So that looks pretty good. It's interesting, and that may play into the future here. Control yokes there. Again, all looks good. Injector pin marks, but it looks like for the most part they're on interior parts that you wouldn't see, or you wouldn't be able to see as easily. Yeah, so there's that sprue. Looks pretty good. And the last one, we've got the machine gun pods here, propellers, fittings. These are probably the prop shafts. Then you have the front of the cowl flaps here, the cowls, the nose, and then more bulkheads with the, we'll call them wing spars. I'm not sure if that's the right terminology, but that is the part that protrudes out of the fuselage for the wings to attach to. Wheels, and the detail on the wheels is really good, actually. The engines, you know, pretty basic one-piece affairs, but being inside this deep cowl with props on it, it'll serve my purposes fine. We got radios, looks like ammo lockers maybe. This right here is kind of like a bicycle seat kind of thing, which I'm sure is part of the controls for the front end of the aircraft, I'm going to assume. Gun feed belts here, I'm assuming. And what's cool is these crew figures. Now, these are really old figures. However, the detailing on them is really good. And people from back in the day, like Shepard Payne, they could paint these dudes up and they would look just great. The mold seam lines on these, you know, again, this is, you know, was molded in 91. So not even 20 years after the original molds were made. These figures look pretty good. I might try and find a way to incorporate those, but we'll see. But anyway, that's the last sprue. And again, not much to talk about in the way of flash or anything weird like that. And then last, we've got the clear sprue here. And, you know, typical of the time, you know, it's nice and clear. There's kind of a scuff mark right there and a scuff mark there, but not too bad for the time period. The detail is enough that it should be easy to utilize masks, whether homemade or aftermarket. And then like these big windows here in the sides, that's where you'd be able to see into the fuselage the most. And again, you're not going to really see that much. We got some light covers here. So yeah, you know, clear stuff. About par for the course for the time frame in which this was made. All right, so that is the box contents. So with that, let's go ahead and talk aftermarket. Okay, the first thing is Eagle Cals B-25J 345th Bomb Group Air Apaches. This is the this is a decal set I got. Now, I'm assuming that by these emblems here that I'm sure it says in the instructions. Let's see if it does. Doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't say, but same emblem, so I'm assuming it's the Air Apaches as well. But I'm going to be doing this particular aircraft here, number 199 B-25J-11 43-36199. And part of the reason I'm doing it is I like that it has the yellow bomb markings. I like the red cowl, front of the cowling there. And I like this metal, bare metal nose. Why? For no other reason, it just looks cool. I'm not going to open this now. I will later on, but here's an example. This is Betty's Dream. And I've used Eagle Cals before, and they're really, really nice. They're very good decals. And because they're printed by Cartograph, but they come with all these small stencil-y looking things, and they just look good. So that is the first aftermarket deal I'm going to do. Aircraft 199. And we got a box of tricks here. So a couple things. This is my first time ordering from Hannets in England, and I have to say that I was very pleasantly surprised. Ordering from overseas, I figured it would take a little bit longer to get the stuff than it would from a place in the States, but I actually got this faster than some of the places that I order from in the States. I'm not going to say any names because they're a good place. They just take a while to get stuff to you. But about the same time as it would take for me to get something from, say, Sprue Brothers, which is across the country from me. So I was really stoked. Hannets, if you haven't ordered from them, just because they're overseas, don't not order from them just because they're overseas. Shipping rates, about the same as ordering in the country, in the continental U.S., and the prices were very, very good. So I'll order from them again just because of that. But let's talk about what I got for aftermarket for this thing. So first thing, pitot tubes, plastic ones are horrible. So I got this Master Reality in Miniature 148 U.S. World War II pitot tube shark fin type, which is good for P-36s, 39s, 40s, 47s, T6, and B-25. Very small, but very nice looking piece. So that's the first aftermarket thing I got. Next is die-cut flexible masks, 4-scale plastic kits for the Revell Monogram kit, B-25J 148 scale. Self-explanatory, paint masks. I got the CMK Czech Masters kits, high quality cast product B-25 Mitchell wheels cross tread pattern. So it comes with the hubs and the wheels. You get front and wing wheels, and the detail on these is really nice. So I think this is my first time using CMK, but just in looking at it, it looks really nice. And it's also kind of nice because they're weighted. Then we got some B-25CD Mitchell gun barrels. Thought I had more. I'm gonna have to order more. Boy, did I blow it, because this is only 2, 4, 6, 7 guns. And that dog ain't gonna hunt, so I'm gonna have to order more. But they look pretty good. They were really inexpensive, so not being able to see them very well on the illustrations, I figured I'd take a chance, and I'll have to take a look at them, make sure they aren't like warped or anything weird like that. But yeah, these are quick boost. Last, I got the Kits World 3D printed 1/48 scale B-25G Mitchell instrument panels. So we've got for the radios, we've got just all kinds of stuff here. The main control panel or instrument panel, and they look really nice. I've used similar stuff before. This first time getting Kits World, and it's probably hard to see through this plastic here, but it's got real nice relief to it, texture, and it just looks really good. And it was really cheap. You know, if it would have been too much, I probably wouldn't have bothered, just because, you know, most of this is just not going to be seen. But I did want to try Kits World because I haven't tried them yet. So good looking stuff though. Should, you know, make it look good. And it'll look good in the pictures until I get it all, you know, buttoned up and you can't see any of it. But hey, yeah, so that's that. That is the aftermarket stuff I got. So there you go. That is the kit, the contents, and the aftermarket. Other than that, it'll be the usual suspects for supplies, Tamiya, testers, cements, super glue if needed, Walther's solve set, testers decal set for the decals. For paints, for anything being sprayed, I will be using acrylic lacquers. Probably a mix of Scale Model Supply brand and MRP. Maybe some Tamiya, or Tamiya, however you say it. But that is pretty much it for supplies. You know, I'm sure I'll have to use some fillers and stuff like that, and it'll be the usual ones. Glazing and spot putty, Vallejo, plastic putty. But, you know, we'll see. So that's pretty much it as far as what's going to go into this kit. We'll be doing build videos of this, but it's going to be my new style of summary type build videos as opposed to step-by-step. I've done a couple of them so far doing it that way, and I haven't had any complaints from anybody yet, and the response has been mostly positive. Well, it's been all positive. Nobody's had anything bad to say, and the people who have commented have said they like the format and it works for them and it works for me, and I think, you know, it's going to be the way going forward. But anyway, there will be a video series, and it will be summary type, and I'll just talk about certain things, you know, that need to be talked about. So that is it. So ends part 1, the intro for the Monogram 1/48 scale B-25J. If you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comment section. Hit the subscribe button. Hit notifications if you want to keep up on this build. If you have any experience with this kit, please put it in the comment section down below. If you just want to talk about anything else, have any hints, tips, concerns, anything like that, put them in the comment section down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So, until next time, thanks for watching Plastic Models by a Regular Dude, and I'll see you all later.